afternoon and welcome to First Financial Biz Beat, presented by the Business Courier. I'm Kyla Woods. Well, the tri-state is on the verge of reopening pretty much everything. The vast majority of the economies in Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky will be up and running by June. This past week, restaurants started opening. Mavericks in Lawrenceburg was one of the first to welcome back customers. Servers are wearing masks. Everything that gets touched is getting also a deep clean, and there's hand sanitizer all over the place. It's just outdoor seating right now in Ohio. At Oakley Pub and Grill, there are barriers separating tables, a generous amount of space between picnic tables, and you guessed it, more hand sanitizer.
We act like a family. I mean, we all work together. We spend as much time sometimes with each other as we do with our families at certain times, and being able to help the staff and get them back working on their feet, making sure that they're not stressed or worried about their bills and stuff like that. And then for our regulars, being here 15 years, we've had a ton of regulars, and they've been wonderful through the carryout, but they've already reached out and said, we can't wait just to see your guys' face.
And things are a little different in OTR, where barriers allow restaurants to create makeshift patios and expand outdoor dining. The idea is to strike a balance between getting people to dine at the restaurants while doing so in a manner that's not overcrowding. Well, most people haven't mastered the at-home haircut, which is why many are thankful salons are open again.
Trying to keep everything disinfected.
A lot has changed at Allure Styles in Lawrenceburg. Stylists are no longer taking walk-up customers. Masks, of course, are essential, and everyone wears a clean cape. Still, it's a relief for many customers to be back in their stylish chair.
While I don't have a lot to work with on top, I've tried to compensate here during the coronavirus with my quarantine beard.
And things are much different also at malls these days. At the Kenwood Town Center, for example, there are frequent cleanings, hand sanitizing stations, and social distancing directions. Many shoppers are coming to prepared as well.
Oh yeah, we got our masks, our gloves, we've got the wipes in the car, so we got our sanitizer, we're ready to go.
It's up to each individual store whether you can try on clothes, and actually not all stores are even open. At Kenwood, Nordstrom, Macy's, and the Apple Store are all closed for the time being. So here's everything that's opening within the next couple of weeks in Ohio. Next week, it's campgrounds and horse racing tracks. The 31st, daycares and day camps. And the big one is May 26th. Pools, B&Bs, low-contact sports, and gyms will be good to go. But the last 2 months have changed the traditional gym model.
There is a big fear factor, some people coming back, and I just think it's going to take time. We're going to be doing, some clients inside, maybe some in the park, some virtual training at first. So it's going to be like spread out.
And equipment will be spaced out and cleaned after each use. And at many gyms, clients will have their temperatures taken. But state leaders warn this is not a free-for-all opening, and that the key to stopping the spread of the coronavirus is you.
So I beg of Ohioans, really help support these actions, help support these businesses to succeed by going about these things very, very carefully, thoughtfully, with this.
And all that brings us to this week's front page centerpiece. Cincinnati's hospitals are open for business, but whether they can recover is another question. Medical centers have lost billions because of bans on lucrative elective procedures. So it's not a stretch to say that as doctors and nurses struggle to care for patients and this crisis, some hospitals are facing the fight of their lives. Courier reporter Barrett Brunsman wrote this story, and he talked to Courier editor Rob Dahlmeyer about how hospitals are trying to get that revenue back.
Barrett, thank you so much for being here. We're both safely ensconced in our homes. But you had a big cover story this week, on Cincinnati's big hospital systems and how they're faring. First things first, how serious is this pandemic for our big systems?
Rob, some local hospitals have lost $10 million or more a week during the ban on elective surgery. And that could translate into losses in excess of $100 million for the fourth quarter of their fiscal years. So it's very significant.
How do they offset those losses?
In some cases, with pay cuts for executives and reduced hours for others. Some hospitals have furloughed workers. Other ways include eliminating consultants and holding off on some capital projects.
And how can hospitals recover? And maybe you can be a little bit more specific here while we're talking about this. When you're talking about recovery, what did some of the CEOs of these local hospital systems tell you about what they need to do to recover? Again, specifically.
Yeah, well, they're all optimistic that the situation will get better. I can tell you that St. Elizabeth Healthcare, which is the dominant medical provider in Northern Kentucky, was allowed to resume elective procedures this week at 50% of the pre-COVID patient volume. That's true of all Kentucky hospitals. And St. E will be able to ramp up to 100% toward the end of this month. And the CEO, Garen Colvin, tells me that St. Elizabeth will go to 7-day-a-week surgeries to make up for lost revenue. Ohio hospitals also were allowed to resume some elective procedures at the beginning of this month.
Now, that's something that's interesting is that, and you did a great job of explaining this in the story, but when the COVID-19 crisis started, the hospitals obviously were in the news because they were, we were hoping that they wouldn't be overloaded with patients. And so that's what everybody focused on. But the revenue that hospitals need to generate to stay open, those kinds of things just weren't happening. And how are they facing that now? Are people willing to go back to hospitals? And what were the messages that the CEOs told you about how safe it is to go to a hospital?
Yeah, the local hospital systems are actually coordinating on their message on this, Rob. The local CEOs stress that the hospitals are expert at containing infectious disease and at preventing its spread. And each of the hospital systems has taken extraordinary measures to segregate COVID patients from others at their facilities. For example, St. Elizabeth treats COVID patients only at its Fort Thomas campus, and their surgeries are done at St. E's Edgewood and Florence hospitals. Also, all patients, employees, vendors, anyone else is being screened at the entrances of the hospitals. They're taking their temperature, and everybody inside is required to wear a mask. Not only all the employees, but even the patients who are undergoing surgery. And the CEOs tell me, Rob, these measures are likely to stick around.
Yeah, well, they are, loud and clear in your story was that they are open for business and that they're prepared for this. Obviously, they've been delivering babies for the last couple months, and that's gone just fine. So if people out there have been putting off, surgeries, I guess the message is, come on back, and this is what the hospitals need to keep rolling. So thank you very, very much, Barrett, for being here. And everybody should read that story. It's a really good one. And Barrett got access to pretty much all the CEOs of our big systems. It's a great read, and it's well worth your time. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much, Barrett and Rob. Well, Greg Kesterman has been on the front lines for all of this. The acting head of the Hamilton County Public Health Department took over the department just before the virus started spreading in the U.S., meaning a worldwide pandemic has been a trial by fire for him.
I was looking forward to my first month, maybe learning a little bit more about Hamilton County Public Health. Even though I've been here 15 years, there's a whole bunch I had to learn. And so as the pandemic ramped up, it was kind of really eye-opening and just challenged me to step up to the role right away.
In other news, Taste of Belgium is slowly reopening, but found a way to help even while closed. It partnered with the Council on Aging to get breakfast to area seniors in low-income senior apartment buildings. On the menu, omelets, biscuits and gravy, country fried steak, and waffles.
We had the extra space. We have the capabilities to provide a safe environment for workers to stay 6 feet apart and really just crank out a lot of meals for the Council on Aging.
Most of our seniors and home-delivered meals receive a lunch or a dinner. So we just thought it would be very neat to provide a nice homemade breakfast meal to seniors in a time of heightened anxiety and great need.
The Council on Aging has delivered more than 210,000 meals from emergency food boxes since March. Up next on First Financial Biz Beat, the local startup that wants to change the way you buy and sell homes. And congratulations to Patrick Hayes, the attorney with Calfee, Halter, and Griswold, is another one of our 40 Under 40 honorees. Results in Hamilton County's primary are finally all in. Alicia Reese came out on top in a tight Hamilton County Commissioner's race. And Issue 7 squeaked by, which means you'll pay more sales tax for improvements to bus service. The city of Covington is buying the former IRS site downtown. The city will borrow up to $30 million to buy the 17-acre plot of land. The plan is to demolish the building and prepare the property for private development. The IRS closed the facility last September after 52 years. Small businesses in Hamilton County are getting more help in the form of forgivable loans.
Remember, the criteria is limited to really small businesses that are struggling right now that didn't get those federal dollars. So that's a bit of a niche, and so because we think that's where the greatest need is.
$5 million of the money received from the CARES Act is being set aside for the program. The loans, up to $10,000 each, are for qualifying small businesses that bring in less than $1 million in gross revenue. Well, the economic shutdown has been really hard on business, especially those owned by minorities. So a few local organizations launched a fund to help. Eric Kearney, head of the African American Chamber of Commerce, is one of the people behind that effort, and he joins us this morning live via Skype. Eric, it's so good to have you with us.
Great to see you, Kyla, as always. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, the African American Chamber recently surveyed its members about those PPP loans. What were the results from that survey?
Well, we found that 85% of our members decided to apply for a PPP loan, and of those, 37% were able to get a loan, and then 63% either were denied because the money ran out, or they're still waiting for a response, or they were asked for more information.
And of course, we've heard about a lot of obstacles, especially for small businesses applying for the PPP loan. So when you heard that 37%, why do you think that number reflects those who received funding?
Well, I think there are a couple of things. A lot of small businesses lack certain relationships. So one is a relationship with a banker. Two is a relationship with an accountant who can quickly provide the financial documents that are needed to apply for the PPP, and then also a relationship with a lawyer because there are certain legal documents that are needed or required in order to fulfill the application. So I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people did not receive money. In terms of those who did receive money, based upon their responses, they were able to act quickly. They had all of their financial records prepared and able to send them out. And then they had a relationship with a banker. Typically, those who received money, at least in our subset, were larger companies, were larger members.
And it seems like this whole process has really put a light on some of the obstacles that small businesses, especially small minority businesses, face on an ongoing basis. So we have the African American Chamber partnering with Mortar and several other organizations to raise and disperse funds to small minority businesses. So tell us about the fund and why it's so important.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this because on a lot of different levels. One, it helps small businesses. Two, I get to work with the great people at Mortar and GCMI and LISC and the Hispanic Chamber and the Indian American Chamber and the Urban League. It's a really great group of people. OTR Chamber, I don't want to forget them. They're great people, and I think that speaks well about Cincinnatians coming together and working together, and that happens in the small business, minority business ecosystem, as well as in other arenas. Getting back to the Minority Business Assistance, Emergency Assistance Fund, it's a crowdfunding site where people can go and they can make a contribution, a small one, mightycause.com/organizations/save our businesses. And when they make a contribution, that money is going to be pooled, and we're going to use a lottery system to get it out to businesses who need it, small businesses that need some money.
Eric, thank you so much for continuing to be a champion for those minority businesses. Thank you for your leadership, and we'll continue to share that information as well.
Okay, thank you, Kyla.
Thank you. Well, still to come on First Financial Biz Beat, the local startup looking to disrupt residential sales and the early signs it's working. Rabin is a former VP at a major real estate company. He left because he saw a way to turn the industry on its head, and he found sellers were frustrated with the process, including the amount of commission paid, the experience falling short of expectations. That's where HomeShake comes in. The local startup basically takes the middleman out of the equation.
What we're finding is that when you allow people to communicate directly and work together, good things happen.
So here's a breakdown of just how much money is saved. Selling a $250,000 house using the traditional method will cost the seller about $16,000. On HomeShake, it's only $3,500. And the financial benefit is greater the more expensive the home. By the way, Greater CEO Rich Greater is using HomeShake. Before the pandemic, he had a full price offer on his East Walnut Hills home on the second day. Well, Cincinnati's become a regular and popular place to shoot movies over the past decade, but projects are at a standstill, meaning a lot of people are unemployed. Film Cincinnati has raised thousands to give to those out of work in the form of gift cards. Film Cincinnati Executive Director Kristen Schlottman talked about the initiative with Courier publisher Jamie Smith.
Thanks, Kyla. Kristen, thanks for joining me today to talk about this important piece of conversation. We're going to talk a little bit, as Kyla said, about Film Cincinnati Cares for Crew. Can you tell our audience, if they don't know what that is, tell them a little bit more about it?
Absolutely. I think people in Cincinnati realize there have been a lot of major motion pictures in town in the last, 4 to 6 years. But what they might not realize is that there are hundreds of people working in this industry behind the camera. And those people live and work in Greater Cincinnati, and without work right now, those are the people suffering during this pandemic. So FC Cares for Crew, as Film Cincinnati Cares for Crew, we're trying to bring a spotlight and some help to these hundreds of people that can't be forgotten during this time.
That's great. What organizations out there are showing support right now?
Jamie, we've been so fortunate because we've had so much great support in the region in the past. We went back to some of the foundations that we've worked very closely with. And before before they refocused all their funding and pulled it from certain budgets to address this pandemic, we said, can we be part of that dialogue with you? And can you find help for these people that are not only out of work, but are suffering, just buying groceries, basic essentials. And the Hale Foundation has been incredible. They're visionaries in our community, and Tim Maloney has been wonderful. The Greater Cincinnati Foundation, as you know, is a huge supporter in this town and was really great. And the last one is the McLean Foundation. And they're our next door neighbors over on Race Street. And they too right now see the importance of just helping the less fortunate.
Yeah, that's awesome. Those names just continue to come up in every conversation, don't they? That's great. Well, tell our listeners and me, how can we help? How can we be part of the support?
Well, all of us are asking ourselves that right now, right? And I don't look at the film industry as different from anyone else struggling during this pandemic. But if I can help as a leader in this organization, shed some light on the communities that we're representing, then that's what we want to do. So the basic form of help right now is you can make donations to Film Cincinnati. We're purchasing gift cards from Kroger, another local partner of ours, and giving to all of the crew and talent, the people that work to support these kinds of productions. And we're also selling Film Cincinnati swag on our website. We have great hoodies and hats and things like that will also go to supporting that. But more than anything, we just want people to recognize that Film Cincinnati is an economic driver, and why we might not be part of the immediate healthcare response during COVID-19, we hope to be an economic responder and really help drive the economy back as everyone finds their footing on the other side of this pandemic. So as long as we can support these people along the way and make sure this organization also survives and gets through the other side, we really want to see that economic force help Cincinnati come back.
That's awesome. I just went out and bought a hoodie because a good friend of mine gave me one of the hats a few years ago when we were on a trip. So I needed a hoodie to go along.
Hoodies are sweet.
You kind of made that comment before about impact and economic impact. I know so many people think Film Cincinnati is important and they're valuable because it puts Cincinnati on the map. You know, you bring Carol and you bring George Clooney and you bring all these people to the city that make such a difference. But I think very few people realize the money involved and the economic impact. Talk a little bit about that in a nutshell as quickly as you can.
Sure, I'm glad you asked. 98% of our industry never walks on a red carpet. George Clooney, Mark Ruffalo, they make the headlines when they're in town, but there are hundreds of people. They're craftspeople, they're catering people, they're drivers, they're construction workers, they're painters, they're artists. These are the people that make these productions come to life. They live right here in our community, and those are the people that we want to see go back to work. Over the last 4 years, we've created over 3,000 jobs. We've seen $54 million of direct impact in Greater Cincinnati last year alone because of major motion pictures coming to town. So we want to keep these major motion pictures coming. We want to anchor television series here like Ozark or Fargo or whatever the next hot show is, because once we have safe protocols and safe environments, we're hoping that those people come back and spend money in our community. And also, our local people go back to work.
Yeah. Well, I can't thank you enough for everything you've done over the years. I mean, just getting, like you said, so much of it is the brand you've helped build for Cincinnati, but just seeing those numbers and that revenue that you've brought in. And as you said, all the people you've put to work because of this production. So thank you so much. Come on, viewers, let's get on there. Let's help support Film Cincinnati Cares for Crew, and hopefully we'll be back to work as soon as we can.
Thank you. Yeah, somebody's got to run that camera for you guys.
That's right. Thanks so much, Chris.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jamie. Well, thank you for joining us for First Financial BizBeat. For business news around the clock, visit thebusinesscourier.com. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook, and be sure to sign up for our daily emails. I'm Kyla Woods. Have a great weekend.